right near the top of your alphabet base. Okay, a little bit of agadata. Tani Rishon Bar Yochai. Do you have it? Tani, the fourth line down. There's a dot. Tani Rishon Bar Yochai.
Okay, right. Tani.
Okay, you got it now?
Yeah, sure.
Tani Rishon Bar Yochai Omer. Rishon Bar Yochai said, Ad heichon diktika Torah begezel. How far did the Torah go in being meticulous about theft? A person and his friend have to be careful even unto when they're lifting the axe. Now that reason that means because a worker who's working the field is only allowed to partake of the growth when he's actually chopping, when he's actually swinging his sickle, I guess magal really is. So since that's the case, so you have to be so meticulous and make sure you're actually swinging the sickle at the time that you're eating. Or, involved. Well, you don't have to literally be swinging, but you have to be involved in that phase of the work, not some other phase of the work. Says, continues Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Gedola Melacha Shlochorav Dara Mabel. Work is a very wonderful thing, because the generation thought it was not destroyed, because they didn't do any work. V'naflu begezel. He brings down here the Kavanaki from a Mindershtan Chuman Breishis, which says that they would plant 1 year and would make work for 40 years. In other words, they would have a bracha that 1 year's planting would last for 40 years. So since that's the case, they were idle most of the time. So since they were idle, they started, if you're the idle, so then you start stealing, right? So they started becoming robber barons. And besides that, a worker does his work, and he's ochel, and he eats, upatim in agezel, and he's exempt from theft. So we see what a wonderful thing work is. A work exempts a worker from theft, and the Dor Babel was destroyed because they were not conduct themselves properly vis-a-vis theft. He brings down here the Kapanaki, very interesting thing. Says you find also Mesech Nedarim in the Babli. Rabbi Shimon says Gedol Malacha Shemechabedes is Baalea. Work is very good. That's a wonderful thing, and that it gives honor to its word to people who do it. And Rabbi Shimon says, and also in Mechilta, that's a Gedol Malacha. And the question is, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the one who says in Brachos that people are not supposed to work. He says that if you fulfill a Safta de Ganecha, then would Torah Mataheo. So what are you going to do, right? Because you're never going to have time to learn. So Rabbi Yishmael says, well, you should work. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, you're not supposed to work. So how do you reconcile the contradiction? So it brings down an amazing Stei Chemed, that the Stei Chemed says that we're going to learn actually in the Bavli Daf Yomi tomorrow or the day after, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the cave for 12 years. After he came out the first time, so every place he looked, he would, where he saw things he disproved of, so that person who he saw got burnt up. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Hashem said, you came out to destroy my world, Chizul Maraschel, and go back to your cave. And he went back to the cave for a year, and then when he came out the second time, so he understood, he would, even though his son, Rabbi Shimon, was such a zealous individual, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai understood that there is a purpose for working and all that kind of stuff. So he wants to say that really the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai reneged on the Gemara in Brachos. The Gemara in Brachos, which says that you're not supposed to work, that was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's original opinion. Then after the cave experience, after being in an additional year, he came back out and he understood that work is an important thing, and then he came to the conclusion which the Yerushalmi here brings, which is that Gedola Malacha, that work is a good thing. So it's interesting, he went from Torah only to being Torah Derech Eretz, or Torah Maga, depending on your perspective, after he came out of the cave. Okay? What? I don't know. This is amazing Stei Chemed. Brings it down here from the Stei Chemed. Ma'areches Havav Klautas Vav Timur Masra V'li Hadal. I know Stei Chemed says, first my knowledge should not work either. It's one of us. Okay. Says more further. Ksiv Lo Sachsam Shavadisha. It says, do not muzzle an ox when he's threshing. Uksiv, it says, Kisava V'ker Me'echa. You should go, when you go into your friend's vineyard, you eat when you're actually involved in harvesting. Ad kan lo shamana. Until now, we only heard el shor betolush, that an ox eats in stuff which is severed from the ground, stuff which he's threshing. While the mechubar, and a man eats in that which is connected to the ground, the stuff growing on the vine. Adam ma'u sheyochal betolush. What about a man? Can a man eat in that which is severed from the ground? In other words, we extrapolate from an ox and say the following: Uma ima shor. If an ox she'eno ochel b'mechubar, who doesn't eat when something connected to the ground, ochel b'talush, he does eat in something which is severed from the ground. Adam, a human being, b'mechubar, who eats the stuff which is mechubar. Eino din shiocha b'tolush is not a kavachomer that he in stuff which is connected down. It's not certainly true that he eats in stuff which is severed from the ground. Says Gemara, no. Talmud Lomar lo sachsam shor b'disho. It says do not muzzle an ox when he's threshing. Shor below sachsam, an ox cannot be muzzled when he's threshing, but ain't other below sachsam. But a man may be muzzled when he's threshing. In other words, you may tell a man he's not allowed to eat from that which is no longer connected to the ground when he's working with it. We don't pass him this way. We paskin a man may eat when he's threshing, even when he's working in stuff which is severed from the ground. But this Tana holds that a man may not eat when he's working in stuff which is no longer attached to the ground. And vice versa. Shor ma'u shiocha mim chubar. What can an ox eat when it's working in stuff which is still connected to the ground? Uma adam sheina ochel b'tolush, a human being who doesn't eat in stuff which is severed from the ground. Ochel b'mechubar, he does eat when it's connected to the ground. Shor b'tolush, a ox who does eat when it's severed from the ground. Eino din she'ochel b'mechubar, is it not kavachomer that he certainly eats now which is connected to the ground? Oh, or do I say no? Ma'akam below sachsom, just like over here, it's by you should have muzzle. Avkam below sachsom. So too, well, actually, it's this is not this. Continuing, or perhaps I could say it's not another side of the equation, but expounding on the same side further. Ma'akam below sachsom, just like you're not allowed to muzzle an ox when he's threshing, when it's severed from the ground. Avkam below sachsom, so they're not allowed to muzzle an ox when he's working something in the ground, such as plowing or whatever. Talmud Lomar, as the pasuk says, lo sachsam shor b'disho. You're not allowed to muzzle an ox when he's threshing. B'disho. What's next word by you? Ein ata chosmo. When he's threshing, you're not allowed to muzzle him. Aval ata chosmo, but you're allowed to muzzle him when its stuff is still connected to the ground. So according to this Tana, they're exclusive, mutually exclusive. An ox only may not be restrained when he's working stuff which is severed from the ground, but he may be restrained when he's working stuff which is still connected to the ground. A human being may eat only when he's working with stuff which is still connected to the ground, but he can be restrained when he's from eating, or constrained from eating, when he's working in stuff which is already had been harvested. Okay, so it says the Gemara, Mikan Omru, somewhere up to? Yeah. Mikan Omru, from here they said. Now this goes back on the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that a worker who's out in the field can eat and he's exempt from Trumas and Ma'asros. Okay, Mikan Omru, from here we deduce that if he's exempt from Trumas and Ma'asros, that means a person who's working on the field can make a deal with the owner of the field not to eat, or that that his sons and daughters who are working with him out in the field won't eat, if they obviously agree that the husband, the father, should represent them. But for his slaves, whom of course the owner represents, Vaidei Ishto, and his wife, Mipnei Sheyesh B'hem Das, with who have intent and can agree to forgo their portion to their husbands, to their to their masters, and to their fathers. Why is that? They all own it. It's ownership. You know why it's ownership? Whatever the worker eats, he owns, because if he didn't own it, then the moment he took it, it should be considered to be an acquisition. And acquisitions are chayiv and trumus and ma'asros at the very least midrabbanan, right? Because you can no longer snack on an acquisition once there's been a transaction, because it looks as if it's permanent already. So therefore, if it must be that here it's not that he's acquiring it when he's picking it up to eat it, but rather that he owns it. Okay? So therefore, there's a certain degree of ownership which he has in the field by dint of the fact that he's working in it. And that ownership is something which he can negotiate with the owner of the field. It's a remarkable concept. It's his. There's a legal right which he has in the field, which he can now negotiate and decide whether to keep or to give or whatever the case may be. He cannot forego the portion and make deals. Not for his minor son or daughter, nor for his minor slaves, nor for his animals. He can't represent them in a transaction because they don't have das to make him their agent. Okay? Now, the Gemara asks the question: Lo tzricha ocha min haTorah. This is it's not a question by me that somebody who eats min haTorah is exempt from Trumas Ma'asros. He's exempt. I understand that, but yehei chayav. But still, let him be chayav d'Rabbanan. After all, it does look like an acquisition. So this guy, this worker, let him be chayav d'Rabbanan in Trumas Ma'asros. Why is he exempt even d'Rabbanan? In other words, basically, it's a question: why don't we include him in the regular gzeira? We have gzeira. Anybody who buys and sells, it's all d'Rabbanan, right? Anybody who buys and sells and engages in barter of a foodstuff generates a chiyuv of Trumas Ma'asros on it, which is permanent, and therefore snacking is no longer permitted. So let's see the sign here. Let's throw the Rabbanan on the back of the shoulder. Why not? On the back of this worker. Why not? It says more. I'll tell you why. Rabbi Yehuda said, HaTorah Pacha, so the Torah specifically exempt from Trumas Ma'asros. The Chsiv, it says, Kinafshecha. You can eat as you desire. As you desire means everything you desire without taking off Trumas Ma'asros. So we have a general principle: Rabbanan don't make decrees against explicit Torah statements. So the Torah states explicitly that you're allowed to eat, that a worker is allowed to eat without taking Trumas Ma'asros off, without exception. So therefore the Rabbanan are not going to make exer against him, say, well, it looks like a sale, let's slap a prohibition on it. And that's a general principle. Wherever there's an explicit pasuk, the rabbis don't make a takana against it. Okay? Let's go on to
all the time or just by
anywhere in the Torah. Yeah. The Rabbanan never make a takon against something which is befurish b'Torah. Even if they want to, they can't. They don't go ahead and do so. It's too much of a too inconsistent with the Torah. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. Back to Halacha Dalet, the beginning. Haya ose belufsin. I don't have the one in front of me, but it should be towards the end. Around 4, 5, 6 lines to the end of the Mishnah. Yeah. Hayosa belufsin. This is the workers working with figs, which are not so good figs. They were actually used just for cooking, for compotes and things. So the workers should not eat the better figs. Okay, in other words, you can't say, oh, well, I'll wait till I get to the better figs to eat. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. That's what I just said is wrong. Scratch that. What it means is when he's working in the less good figs, he can't extend his hand out to the better figs and take them. Aval, however, bivno shevel and vice versa. When he's working in the good figs, if he wants to take the other figs, he can't take them either. This he can do. He can't refrain from collecting any until he reaches the place where the good figs are, vochel, and eats there. Somebody who makes a barter with his friend, not a worker. I barter in exchange with you. I can give you figs to eat, and you give me figs to eat. Or I give you figs to eat, and you give me figs to dry, and I give you figs to try. I give you figs to eat and you give me figs to dry. In all cases, chayav, these are all considered to be like sales, and therefore they're mechayav when it's no longer allowed to snack from these substances. Rabbi Yehuda chayav in a barter where I exchange to eat, so I gain to eat for me, they're no longer snackable. However, if you accept them in order to dry them, then you can still snack on them. For you, they're not kavu and Trumas Ma'asros. Okay, back to the Gemara. Tamon Tanina. We're still need the alpha on the base. You have it, Mr. Zuger?
It's by an asterisk.
It's by the asterisk, yeah.
Even with the Galena shots.
Oh.
Still no good? Tamatinin. Okay, Tamatinin. Hi, also Batanim, somebody who was working in figs, shouldn't eat grapes. Banovim is working in grapes, shouldn't eat figs. B'tani, lo, we learn concerning this. If you're working on one branch, you can't eat from another branch. Now the Gemara asks a question. If you're working on one branch, you can't eat another branch. Is it partial if you're working on the cooking figs, you can't eat and the fresh figs? It's obvious, right? Says Mara, a very interesting answer. I need it for this case. Let's say if you grafted them both on the same tree, and they're both on the same branch now. So nonetheless, you can't. If you're working on the same branch, you can't eat the good figs from the end if you're on the bad figs at the beginning of the branch. Okay, where the grafted one on the other. Tanya, we learned. When you come into your friend's vineyard, it is pretty unusual. Yeah.
It's like, how far can a person extend his hand? It's almost like theoretically in that same branch, we don't know how far the good figs are from the bad figs.
But that's the thing even on the same branch, we normally would say that you can extend your hand. You can't extend your hand if it has better figs at the other end. Again, it's about the only way this happens is through a graft.
The converse is also not permitted too. So if the worst figs are on the same branch.
Right, even the worst figs. That's right. You have to eat specifically from the type of figs you're collecting. Tanya, we learned. Kisava Kamreach, when you come to your friend's vineyard. So you're allowed to eat, right? Yoram Sharkol, the Makos Dabers, that supposed to tell you about any person, even a person who's not working. Talmud Loima, Velkel Yecholoti, it says you can't put into your own containers, which sounds like Avotanosin, the Caleb Shal, but you are putting into your friend's containers. So they say who's somebody who's putting into his friend's containers? Zapoel, that's a worker. So this is talking about a worker. Who's allowed to eat in his friend's vineyard? A worker. V'achalta anovim, you're allowed to eat grapes. What do you think, we're idiots? We don't know that all there is to eat in a vineyard is grapes. Why does the pasuk say you're eating grapes? From here we derive that if he's working in figs, you shouldn't eat the grapes. If he's eating the grapes, he's working the grapes, you shouldn't eat the figs. When it says you can eat knafshecha like your soul, kol davar shayetzer to have anything that your heart desires. Meaning, there's no limit to what you're allowed to eat. And knafshecha, not in quantity nor quality. Knafshecha, kol davar, as you desire everything. From this we derive shupatim in amaisus. You can eat the entire thing. Not just everything, but the entire thing. The entire thing means even the portion which might otherwise go to Trumas and Ma'asros. So we see that somebody who's working in the field is exempt for Trumas and Ma'asros. Ma'at oicho bepatur, just like you, the owner, can eat and are exempt because you're out in the field. It's not afkol apoil ochel bepatur. So to the worker, eats and exempt because for him it's also a snack. Okay, we're on the top now of. Oh no, we're not yet. Sorry, not yet. Kinafshecha, as your nefesh, mikan, Chaya Rabbi Lezer Chasma Omer. From here, Rabbi Lezer Chasma derive a very interesting statement, which is, Lo yochal poyel yoser al scharo. A worker should not eat more than his wages, more than he's worth. Uminayin, shenafsho kriya scharo. How do you know that your soul is your salary? Boy, you can darshan on this Gemara, right? It says a worker shouldn't eat more than his salary, and we learn after the word nafsho. So we learn the word nefesh is your mean refers to your salary. Again, how do you know that your soul is your salary? As it says, it says Nemar kan nafsho. Here it says you eat as your soul. It says later on by a worker, the word nafsho, it says ve'lavu noseis nafsho, a worker lifts up his soul to his employer to pay his salary. Just like when it mentions nefesh over there, it's referring to salary. Afkan, so to here, scharo, it's referring to your salary. Savecha, you should eat until you're satiated. Well, that means eat normally, the way you get satiated. Shaloya ochilomeki, you shouldn't be engaged in bulimic acts, right? Eating and throwing up in order to be able to eat more. Savecha, as you're satiated, you shouldn't peel the figs, because that's not considered to be proper, that's not the normal way to eating. You shouldn't suck the grapes, only eat. Now, so there's a couple of interesting ramifications of all this. The workers are allowed to engage with the owner in eating salty foods, herring and the like, in order that later on they should be able to eat a lot of grapes. But the Ba'abas can give them wine to drink, in order that they shouldn't eat a lot of grapes. For Rashai, they weren't dealing with heavy machinery, so they could drink wine and work in the old days. For Rashai Bala Para, Lariva Balayla Simli, an owner of a cow, which is being hired out to thresh the next day, he can starve his cow the night before, in order to eat a lot at the time that it's threshing. However, on the other hand, also on the other direction, Rashai Ba'abais Achila Pakir Amir, the owner the owner of the grain, who's renting out the cow, is allowed to give her to eat before threshing a lot of bundles of hay, in order that it shouldn't have much to eat at the time that it's threshing. Rabbi Avo Omer, Avo said very interesting language. Hatrigu lebehemin. Now, hatrigo is a word which has intrigued many generations of commentators. The pshat he takes from the Gra is, give esrogim to eat. Hasrigu. Give esrogim to eat. And the Rabbi, he liked to make up words. This is really, like I would say, from modern Hebrew, I could say to give you banana seed, I call hibanu, right? Right. He says here, he brings down here that with the Gemara in Erevin Daf Nun Gimel and Beis in the Bible, he says, "Ravo hoya ragil ledaber b'lashon chachma." He used to speak obviously in, I guess,
make verbs out of nouns.
Right? Make verbs out of nouns, right? So he said, "Atri lebahamin." The Bahamin are workers. Again, it's not clear if he's talking about animals. Pashut means animals, but the animals would eat esrogim, and then later on they wouldn't eat much in their threshing. But he brings down that, but they say the Bahamin are actually workers who are working, human beings, and ones who are allowed to eat. So I guess they're working with animals, allowed to eat. So you can distract them by giving them esrogim to eat, which in the old days were cheap. Rabbi Chanina would give his workers to eat dates, in order that they shouldn't eat when they're out in the fields. Rabbi Mana Mechluna, he will give them to eat astapinine, which here he translates as parsnips. Okay, I guess workers like parsnips. Tani. Rabbi Chia says, Poel ochel eshkol rishon. A worker can eat the first cluster even before he's actually put anything into his boss's containers. In other words, he's allowed to eat even before he commences work. Istani Tani, there's some who learned. Oh, do you have Istani? No, 2 lines down. You have Istefani again? No, next 2 lines down. He eats the first, he can eat the first cluster even before he got one for the Ba'abas. What's the next word you have?
Tani Eshkolachor.
Okay, so I have Istani. Some said Tani Eshkolachor, that it's the last cluster. In other words, after he's collected for the Ba'abas, the last cluster can say, you know what, I want the last one, and take it for himself. The same idea, either the first or the last one. Rabbi Shmuel B'Shem Rabbi Hila said, however, this is all logical. Nastu Lasau, once you put it into the owner's basket, also you can't take it out and say, oh, I changed my mind, I want to eat this one, it belongs to the Ba'abas. Rabbi Yossi says, L'chein tzricha. If this is talking about a case where it's talking about a case where he was harvesting and somebody else was putting it into was putting the basket into the Yeah, when it says that he can't eat after the last cluster. So that means after he picked the last cluster, he can't eat, because it's about a case where Reuben was harvesting, and Shimon then takes the basket back to the wine press or to the house, whatever the case may be. So therefore, once he finished harvesting, his work is over. But the same guy, Reuben, was harvesting and then carrying the basket to the wine press or to the house. So in the beginning, he eats. Now, bitchila is a difficult word to translate. What it means at the beginning, but it means here means not when he's working, because when he's working and picking, that's the right, so it's not at the Rabbanan. But here about to say it's at the Rabbanan. So here means when he put it into the basket, hu ocha mishum hilchos medina. He can eat because this is the custom. Meaning that workers who put stuff in baskets continue to eat because the basket is still something which they're safeguarding for the Baal Bas. So since it's still safeguarding the Baal Bas, even though it's no longer connected to the ground, and Midoraisa they might no longer be allowed to eat, but Midrabanan they eat at this stage. Ulbasof, and when he continues to carry the basket from the field to the wine press, whatever, he also he continues to eat. Mishum apalim, again because of the Rabbanan, because the workers ochlin, they work bali chasen when they're walking. What are the next words you have? Me'uman le'uman, from furrow to furrow, even though they're not actually engaged in work at the time. Chazirasan min hagas, and when they come back from a vineyard as well. Again, so walking workers also get to eat at that time. Uv'chamor, and a donkey, kshiporekus gets to eat even when it's just unloading a load off its back. Okay?
So there's a difference between Mishum Medina and Mishum HaPolan?
Yeah. Medina is customary.
Yeah, Poland
and Poland is a Rabbanan, an outright Rabbanan. Why the difference, I don't know.
But the terminology Mishum HaPolan is...
No. Mishum, the following statement, halacha, Mishum HaPolim ochim, it's all one long statement. Mishum HaPolim ochim balichosim me'uman luman u'chasos me'agas. Because that quote from Bava Metzia. It's a quote from Bava Metzia. So it's because of that entire statement that they eat. Okay? Tanya, we learned, Mari Mota Malporlov, a person can make a ruse not on his workers, but through his workers, here it means. Lios Ochlin Teisha V'Kotzi Machas. He wants to get them to eat. He has to get them to eat. He made a deal he's going to feed them for the day. But he feeds them from his own stuff. Mr. Sugar, what does he have to do before he feeds them stuff? If he feeds them from his own property?
Open his own property?
Yeah. Makes a meal. He has to take off? Right, so instead of feeding them directly, what can he do? So they can do, it doesn't have to go true mice of what they eat. It says, eat more than you normally would from what you're working out in the fields.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it says here. He can make this ruse that they'll eat 9 and cut him 1. Which is much, much more than they normally do, right? So that way he doesn't have to feed them stuff which is already tight. So he gains a little bit. You don't have these Tanoi again. But there are those who have Tani. No, you do have these Tanoi? Yeah.
There's Tanoi, Tani.
Okay, there's some Brises would say that he cuts 9 and eats 1. The worker cuts 9 and eats 1. Nicha, I understand that there's a Chiddush Oichlin Machas when it says that, what?
I'm muttering to on my breath at the Gemara.
At the Gemara?
No.
Oh, with the one. Okay. I understand if you're going to tell me they can cut 9 and eat 9 and give 1, so then it's a chiddush. In other words, that even though it's far above and beyond the normal standard operating procedure, that's still permitted. It's permitted to make this ruse in order to allow them to snack and not give stuff to Trumas Ma'asros. However, that they can cut 9 and eat 1, that's obvious. That would be a normal occurrence, right? Rabbi Avid said, this is a chiddush. Shlo Tomar, you shouldn't say, you also kill that if they're eating their allotment via what they're eating on the field, so maybe it's should be considered, again, midrabanan, as if this was completely completed, the process of harvesting these crops, and therefore you're chayiv, and therefore it should be chayiv in Trumas Ma'asros Rabbanan. Again, because I can make it even sharper, because it's being used to redeem an obligation. The Baal Bais is using stuff out in the field to redeem his obligation to the workers. So I might say that already makes the candidate be chayim and trumas u'maisis because being used as to redeem an obligation. So if I have to tell you, according to this Tana, who says they eat one and collect 9, that you're allowed to do it because and not considered to take off trumas u'maisis again because it's not considered to be actually kavua yet, and we don't look at it as if it's it's being used to pay back a loan. Tnicha lecho chayev. It's set back in our Mishnah that if two people barter with each other, either both are going to eat or both are going to are dry, they're chayev. They're no longer allowed to snack. So that's why I understand that if I barter with you in order to eat, so then it looks like a sale, and I'm chayev to take off trumas u'maisis, I can no longer snack, and neither can you. However, it says more liktos chayev. If we're bartering for the purpose of drying, why are we chayev to take up trumas u'maisis? It's not yet gemar malacha. The process is not complete. Rabbi Lezer said, Rabbi Meir, our mission is like Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says, mekach toivo bepeiros, a barter or sale makes peiros considered to be definitively tevel, even shlo nigmar malachta, and even they're not completely worked over yet. From Rabbi Elazar said, Rabbi Meir v'Rabbi Eliezer, and Meir and Rabbi Eliezer shnei marmut evrecha. They both said the same thing. Kamad Rabbi Eliezer Omer repeirush lo nigmar malachta. Rabbi Eliezer said previously in the Perek that fruit which is not yet complete, nonetheless, truma tovelis. If you take truma of them, then you can no longer snack off them. You have to take off them both the mices as well. Kain Rabbi Meir Omer, so Rabbi Meir says mekach tovo bepeiros, that acquisition makes stuff tevel, meaning you can no longer eat without tithing. Shalog bepeir shlo nigmar malachta, even the stuff is not fully, completely worked over yet. Hadrul achayover, new perek. Hamavir teinim b'chatzero. Some of you takes figs via his field. Via is the key word here. It's not in his field, but via his courtyard. Liktos, to a drying area. Banavu bnei beso, his children members of his household, ochlin upturim, can eat, and they are exempt. Bapol and Shimon, also the workers are with him. Bismach ein ela mazonos, if they're not under his, if they're not being fed by him, meaning that they don't have the deal that they must be fed by him, so it's not like paying back a loan. So then, ochlin upturim, they too are eat and are exempt. But if he is required to feed them, so then it's like paying back a loan. And then the workers may not eat from this. Now, it's very important to realize that the reason why they may not eat, the workers, in the right end of the last perek, we had that the guy out in the field can eat and snack. Right? Here the workers can't eat and snack. What's the difference? Because before it was out in the field. Here it's in a courtyard. Courtyard is more stringent. So in a field, so the workers can continue to eat because we assume it's not considered to be it doesn't look like it's actually a monetary transaction. It looks like it's eating the normal amount. So even if he's eating more than he normally would, so that's just a ruse. But here where it went through the field to the courtyard, which is already a quasi going to the house. So then in that case, I don't allow the workers to eat and be potter, because then it looks like going to house plus making a deal with it, and that's impermissible. Okay, let's go to the Gemara, Mr. Zuger. No, I'm sad you the whole time tonight. Come on. Last night you were with me the whole time. Okay, go right to the Gemara. Who atzmo ma'al shiyocha? Well, you want to get a cup of coffee? I'll wait for you to get back. We might as well record this. We haven't discussed this yet, but the Baal Bais, what about the Baal Bais himself? And we're going to ask. We just talked about his members of his household. What about him? So we're going to see that it's a relative thing precisely because it is a chotzer. Okay, so but a chotzer is quasi house. That is the point of our Mishnah. So there's going to be a couple of issues here, right? It's like a house, and also you're passing through. All those become factors here. Okay, we're up to Atzmo Ma'u Shiocha. Right at the beginning of the Gemara. Yeah, hu atzmo. You have a line first. You have a header, right? Hamaver teinim gomer. Okay. Hu atzmo ma'ushiocha. Rav Bais himself. The Mishnah discussed everybody in the family except for the owner. The owner. What's his status? Rav Amar Ohu Aser Lecho. He's not allowed to eat. Ula Rabbi Shmuel B'Shem Rabbi Lezer Amar Hu Muter Lecho. He's allowed to eat. Now, what's the machlokas here? Rav Rabbi Meir. Rav's is like Rabbi Meir. It's interesting. It's a very fascinating comparison. I shouldn't say very. Somewhat fascinating. Rabbi Meir said at the end of the last Mishnah that sales are kovea. You're not allowed to snack anymore, even if it's not nigmar malachtam. Rav holds the chotzer is also the same thing. Here it's not nigmar malachtam because you're carrying it through the yard in order to dry somewhere. It wasn't completed yet. The process is not completed because these are figs you intend to dry, right? You're not going to leave them moist. So therefore, this is not completely processed yet. So then nonetheless, just like our mayor says, that barter or sale is something which is not completely processed yet, not nigmar malachto, prevents you from subsequently snacking. So to here, going through your chotzer, b'davar shlo nigmar malachto, prevents you from snacking. Why only the Baal Bas? Because it's his yard. So since it's his yard, so therefore he's now chayev. He's not allowed to snack anymore. Anybody else, the yard doesn't play that critical role in their chiyuv. Rabbi Lezer's Karabanan, who hold that here it's not Gmar Malachi yet, right? They intend to dry them, and therefore it continues to be exempt even for the Baal Bas. Rabbi Meir asks the Gemara, wait a minute. If Rav's like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir, afilu bana b'nei beis you asurin. If that's the case, so his children and his wife, it's their courtyard as well, right? What's the between him and his wife and kids? So it says Gemara, Ela Rav, Rav Kirebi. Rav holds like Rebbe, who we have not seen yet, we'll see imminently, and Rabbi Elazar's Karabanan. Rabbi Elazar like the rabbis. Dam Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Simon said name Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and Rabbi Yosef ben Shaul said b'shem Rav ein ochlin ala mukta. It's a very interesting halacha. You're not allowed to eat stuff which is going to be dried. You're not allowed to snack it, even though it's going to be dried. Ela makoymai, unless you're in the place of the drying. In the drying location, meaning on the roof or wherever you're going to dry it. Divrei Chachamim. So a similar idea, right? It's like Min HaMukaf, right? Rabbi Yaakov B'Shem Rabbi Shimon Levi said, Divrei Chachamim, according to Chachamim, Ochlin al Muktzah, Bein al Mekomo, Bein al Shalom Mekomo. This is Divrei Chachamim is actually some. Wait a minute, where's Rebbe? I think I read something wrong a minute ago. Yeah, it was a try. It said b'shem Rav. It's b'shem Rebbe, right? Right. Yesterday, b'shem Rebbe said, "Ein ochlim mukta el makomo." Divrei Chachamim. Rebbe's position is that you can only eat in the spot of the mukta. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yidi b'shem Rishon ben Levi said, "Divrei Chachamim." The Chachamim argue on Rebbe. I don't think you have the words Divrei Chachamim, do you? No, okay. It means the Chachamim argue on Rebbe. If you intend to dry it, you can still snack on it, regardless of whether you're in the place or they're going to be dried or not.
Goes with Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yidi?
It's confusing. I don't know why I'm not sure how to read it because Divrei Chachamim appears twice. Maybe first Divrei Chachamim is a mistake because it's really the Machos Rabbanan is Rabbi holds if you're going to dry them, you can still snack on them, but only in the place you're going to dry them. Why is that? Very interesting dichotomy. It's very interesting. Like, no, it is interesting. He says here, the Kavanoki explains, you're the Baal Boss, right? You're the boss. So if you can decide you're not going to dry them. So therefore, when is it clearly obvious and manifest you're going to dry them? Only if we're standing in the drying location. Then I say, oh, he's going to dry them, so let him snack on them right now because they're not yet at the end of the road, they're not yet a Kamar Malacha, not yet complete yet. But if the Rabbanan say, no, once he decided to dry, even if he's not in the drying location, he's not going to change his mind. So therefore he can continue to snack. Now this whole thing of Rebbe is only by himself, because since he's the boss, he could change his mind. But even his wife and kids, they're not the boss. If the father says, you put it in the drying location, the good old days, you put it in the drying location, that's it, there's no change in the mind. So therefore the kids and wife are always allowed to snack, whether it's in the drying location or not, because they have no right to change the nature of the process. He who has the nature then, the right to change the process, so we can decide in midstream, that's it, we're not drying anymore. So therefore, unless he's standing in the spot where they're going to dry, I say, according to a Rebbe, maybe he'll change his mind, and therefore he's not allowed to snack.
This is an issue, like an issue of Yerushalmi.
Mishul Gemir Stas, right. At what point do I say the Gemir Stas is, according to Rebbe, who said it has to be in the drying location, but we learn out Charuvin, Caribs, before you put them on the top of the, we go from one Yata, from Hanukkah, which you just ended today, to Tu B'Shvat, which is coming up, and the Caribs for if not for Tu B'Shvat, right? Even before you put them on top of the roof, you can still snack from them. The roof is the drying location. You can snack from them even not in the drying location. So we see Raya, not like Rebbe. Amalei, so the question, I don't see how it's right now, like Rebbe's a Tana, can argue on anything. But alright, Amalei, so he said, Los Sivene Charuvin, don't ask me a question from Caribs. You know why not? Charuvin Machal Beimayin. Animals eat Caribs. You ever try to eat boxer? It's hard. It's tough. No normal human being eats that stuff. So it's animal food. So therefore, really, it's not Chaim Trumas Samaitis at all. But if human beings eat it, so it's like a chumrah to take off Trumas Samaitis off it. So therefore, they were not so machmir, so you have to dafka be in the drying location in order to snack on it. Okay? Al daiti to Rav, according to Rav, who said that he's not allowed to eat, and his kids are permitted to eat. I already explained this. Well, explain this outside, but now we'll see it inside. Ma benu ma ben bana. What's between him and his kids? Who aideshu toli b'muktzah? He, because he's contingent on the muktzah. Now it means the exact opposite. It means that the muktzah is contingent on him, right? He decides whether to dry or not. Usher, he can change his intent midstream, so therefore it can't be necessarily considered gemar malacha. One of his kids, aideshu ain't toli b'muktzah, since the muktzah is not contingent on him but on pop. So therefore, mutter, they're allowed to snack, even if it's not yet in the drying location. Nicha banav, I understand his kids, they're exempt. B'nei Beso, but his wife, B'nei Beso, members of the house, a euphemism for wife. Vein lo love mizoinas. It's an amazing question. He's got to feed his wife. So all the food that she gets is really acquired by her. It's acquired. So therefore, any time a wife gets food, she should never be allowed to snack. Why? Because you fall under the rubric of Mekach, right? Anytime a wife eats, the Gemara's Havmin is, she's acquiring it. It's an acquisition. Because there's a halacha, he's chayiv to give him his own. It's an actionable, obligation on him. So therefore it should be considered to be a sale, right? It's an amazing question. Tipater, so the Gemara gives a very kind of a lame answer. Tipater, commandant, is going like the Pino Jones, ain't lisha mizonis devar Torah. That a woman doesn't get food midoraisa. Tani, like we learned, ain't baits been poskim leisha mizonos. Poskim mizonos leisha. Basin does not give a woman to eat midvei shvius. A woman can't be given to eat from shmita fruit. Now let's talk about a woman whose husband is out of town, and she comes to court and says, "Rabbi, I need food." So here we give her food. That's mamish though, like a sale. In other words, we're giving her a right to go down and take to her husband's bank account and acquire money, or take the money to pay for the food, or we're giving her the right to go eat from his crop. In that case, we can't give her shemitah fruit, because you're not allowed to buy and sell shemitah fruit. And this looks very much like a sale. To give her the right to place a lien and collect from the fruit is like a sale, and you can't buy and sell shemitah fruit. But if she's home, you imagine the flip side of this, where this is not true. If he's home, so they're allowed to eat shemitah fruit together. In other words, when does it look like a sale? Only when he's away from home and we give her mazonos as part of a court order. But if he's home and they're eating together supper, so doesn't look like a real sale, and therefore she's allowed to eat the Shemitah fruit with him. So it boils down to is that since it's according to Biddy, at least that Mizonos is not the Raisa, it looks a little bit like a obligation, and therefore like a sale, but not completely like an obligation in a sale, especially if the husband is in town when eating with her, and therefore it's not going to be koveh v'zitrumas and deprive you of the right to snack. Now that we're asking a very cryptic question, let's make the wife like a worker who's not worth a pruta. Now, the way the Kavanaki explains this, he says that wait a minute. A worker normally gets to eat because he makes a salary, right? We learned back in the previous pack the shita of I forget what it was, but one of the Tanoim who said that a worker only gets to eat if he makes more than he's eating, right? So this woman, she's like a worker who doesn't make him any money, right? Because she's not actually going out there and producing money, right? In the good old days, the women stayed at home, they didn't work, they didn't produce money. So, what?
They didn't work in fields?
No, they did, but they didn't actually buy and sell things, right? So Yasu Sokapos and Shava Pruta, and therefore when she eats, again, she's not eating like a normal. She's eating as an acquisition because she doesn't have the rights of a worker to eat. If you give her to eat when she's working, so that's considered to be giving wages, which are not giving wages or paying off. So therefore, it should be fall in the category of mekach hadamro. And by virtue of how we don't say it, it must be shlos so kapol sheni. Must be that we didn't make her like a worker who's not worth his wages, and therefore she's allowed to eat without maisring. Now, that's the Rashi Leo says the exact opposite. He says anyway she should be exempt from Trumas Mites because she's. Well, I think Rashi Leo makes more sense, although he doesn't. Ultimately he pushes it off. But he says Rashi Leo learns the kasha. What do you want to be chayiv in Trumas Mites because she's getting her rights as mizonos, right? And it's an obligation which is actionable. Anyway, she should be part because right now she's out working.
Right.
Since she's working, she's like a worker.
Right.
It's true she's like a worker who doesn't make money. But that was only one shita which holds the worker's got to make money in order to eat. The other shitas hold that even if she doesn't make money, she can still, even workers is causing more loss than gain, he can still eat. So let the wife work here. So let her be exempt from Trumas Mites because she's working, right? And so any worker can snack without Trumas Mites. So there must be that we didn't give a wife the status of a worker. That must be that's the conclusion of the Gemara. And therefore we have to say, how is she allowed to snack and be exempt from Trumas Mites? Only if you hold that mizonos is not a bona fide rights obligation, that it's only a quasi obligation of rabbinic stature. Okay. Be that as it may. Now the Gemara asks, "Filu command damar ein lo love mizonos." Even according to the opinion that holds that she doesn't have mizonos the rights, harei ein lo a love based dira. Doesn't she have the right to a house? And the courtyard is her courtyard. Which that's also an actionable claim she has on her husband. So just his courtyard is her courtyard. So there's like a courtyard is mechayiv him, so to the courtyard should be mechayiv her. Right? Should fix her for Trumas Ma'asros.
The assumption here is that the chutzner follows the house.
What?
The assumption here is the chutzner follows.
Right, we're going to reject that. Because the Tani, though, like this that we learned in Eruvin, Anoshim Sheshitfu below das Noshim. Men who joined in a shituf mevos, committed their chatzeres to be part and parcel of a common shituf mevos, an eruv in an alleyway. So Shlomi das Noshim without their wives' consent, shituf and shituf, that's valid. Noshim sheshitfu Shlomi das Noshim, if the women participated without their men's consent, ain't shituf and shituf, the eruv is not a valid eruv. So we see enachnami, as you were saying, the courtyard is not an integral part and parcel of the house, because on the house she has the right to participate in the eruv even without his knowledge, but in the chotzer she must, the courtyard, she's subordinate to him. Okay? Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. You with me still? Mr. Zuger, you with me? Tanya, the klud shenichnasu misada le'ir. This is going on the next part of the mission, which we haven't seen yet. it says that somebody who takes his workers out to the field when they're allowed to snack. Okay, as long as he doesn't have to feed them, they're allowed to snack. And then we're going to discuss it later on. So it says that as long anybody who came in from the field to the city nitbulu, so then they're no longer allowed to snack. Now that means the workers got food, the food out in the field. They with the permission of Babos. Even they were allowed to snack out in the field with the permission of Babos. Once they ran back to the city, that's it. They're no longer allowed to snack. Masnisa the Rebbe. That statement of Bryce is like Rebbe. The Tan is we learned heavy tainim min asod elochem b'chatzero. If you bring figs from the field, teach them in the courtyard. Shena mishtameres, which is not a courtyard, which is safeguarded, and therefore you certainly are continuing to be exempt from Trumas Ma'asros. But then shochach meitnisel toch, basically you forgot to bring them into your house, or sheichnisam letinokos, or children who are not yet of age to have a tent, bring them into the house. You can bring them back to their original location, vochel, and you can eat mehen arai. You can continue to snack from them. Basically, what that means is inadvertent bringing into a courtyard is not considered to be bringing into a courtyard. If my kids bring it in inadvertently, or I bring it in inadvertently without intent, I can bring it back out and snack. Lamaran el shogeg. So if I bring them in inadvertently, hamezid also. But if I bring them advertently, then I can't take them back out again and snack them. Matnisa, who is the author of this price? Rebbe, or this Mishnah. It's Rebbe. The time we learned, heavy tainim min asoda. If you bring figs from the field, and you pass them through your courtyard, lochlam barosh gago, to go to the head, to go to the top of your roof in order to dry them. Rebbe Mechayev. Rebbe says that's it. Ding, 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 ding. No more snacking. Why is that? Because you intentionally brought them to the courtyard. True. You brought them through. But bringing in even through is Mechayev and Trumas Ma'asros going to Rebbe. As long as you did it intentionally. If you did it unintentionally, so then you're still exempt. But here you brought it intentionally. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda Paiter. Rabbi Yossi says he continued to be exempt. Heve, back top of Amud Beis now. So this teaches us Be'ezed Mantano Hamar V'Teinu B'Chatzero Liktos. This teaches us, when do I say, even though it says Mantano, which sounds like who do I say? I know it's not who do I say, but rather when do I say? When do I say that somebody who brings figs through his field to his courtyard, then they can continue to be exempt, is only if liktos. It's only if he brings them through in order to dry them. But if they're not in order to dry, he's chayev. Now I see I wasn't exact in what I said a moment ago. I didn't fully understand until I read it now. Even according to Rebbe, if you bring the figs through the courtyard to go to dry, then they continue to be exempt. You can still snack from them, as long as Rebbe L'Shitasa holds that he must be in the drying location in order to snack. But he went through your courtyard, you get to the drying location, you're allowed to snack there. Not in the courtyard, but in the drying location, yes. That's only if you took them through your courtyard or whatever, in order to take them subsequently to a drying location. If, however, that's what the Gemara is stressing here. If you took them through your courtyard in order to take them to eat, even if you intend to take them now to eat outside your courtyard, then what you're going to do, you took them through and are going to take them back out again, too late. The chotzer is kovea in that case. And even now that you take them back out of your courtyard, you can no longer snack on them. Because Rebbe says, if you took it to courtyard intentionally, even though you intended to take it back out again, that's it, too late, no more snacking anymore. Okay, that's what the Gemara is saying. Okay, Rabbi Ula, Rabbi Shmoshe, Rabbi Lezer said, Omar Rebbe, Shem Rabbi Lezer, Omar, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. So Maisa, Rabbi Yossi, Yehuda, you machnisim sakakol achorei agagos. Rabbi Yossi, Yehuda were walking down the street, and they were they took their fruit to the drying location behind the house, meaning not through the courtyard, behind the house. Ro also, in order to they should continue to be exempt from Trumas and Ma'asros. Ro saw Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lois. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lois saw them. Varman, he said, "Bo'u, come and see. Ma beinechem l'rishonim. What's between you and the earlier generations?" Rabbi Akiva, hayelokech sholosh minim bepruta. He would buy his 3 little amounts of grain for a pruta. B'shvil aser mikom min. He wanted to be kind of the mitzvah of Meiser as much as he possibly could. He wanted to be kind of mitzvah Meiser whenever he got a chance. I think that was a generation of stature. And you, in order to exempt yourself from mitzvahs, in order to find loopholes, you go behind in roundabout ways in order that it shouldn't go through a courtyard.
Of course, you can't not complain that what they did was wrong.
He is.
No, I'm just saying what they're...
Oh, not that it's wrong halachically, but it's wrong ethically.
It's
not right. It's not leaving the shiur sadin. So says more, but wait a minute. I don't understand why they have to go behind the house. Even if you're going through your courtyard, they're not taking it to dry. Again, they're taking it to eat. But according to Rabbi Yossi, even if taking it to eat, you can go through your courtyard and then go to somewhere outside your courtyard and continue to eat as a snack. Vlab Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, he wasn't Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Let him go through the courtyard. Why do you have to go behind the house? So begin Rabbi Davai May. You're right, Rabbi Yossi himself, he would have gone straight through a courtyard because he was passing through, even intentionally, doesn't deprive you the right to snack later when you get to the other side and get out again. But since Rebbe was with him, who was passing through intentionally, does bar you from snacking later on. So I was covered for Rabbi Yossi because covered to Rebbe. Rabbi Yossi went around in the back. So along the similar vein to what we just said. Certain old men saw them. Armalon, so he said to them, can you give me something to eat? I want a snack. Armalon in. So they said, yes, go ahead, take some to snack. Armalon, so he said, Lavuchon, the b'shmaya lo yavtun. You didn't give to your Father in heaven. In other words, you wouldn't meiser it. Elali, but to me you're willing to give a little bit. This is not ethical and proper behavior. It's not lifnei mishra sadin. We'll stop here for today.